Welcome to What? That Old Queen? A candid and adult take on queer life quandaries at a certain age. So please listen at your own discretion. Presented by Bernie and Tommy, the views here are purely those of the content providers and in no way reflect those of any service you may hear this program on. Now, please let your ears be upstanding for the Old Queens. Hi, Tommy.
Hi, Bernie. You old fairy.
I've got my fairy t-shirt on.
I like it.
Do you know what it says on the back?
I'm a sausage to your face.
No, it says laundrette, drop your pants here. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I feel a bit like I've had a massive night out last night and not had much sleep, and I'm just kind of recovering, which is, I guess, is a version of that. Last night I was on Instagram Live with Timberlina doing tarot card readings, drunk too much, had difficulty sleeping, woke up at 5, made some granola, baked a sourdough loaf, and here I am.
I know that last night was the first night that I've missed your tarot readings. And I feel a bit bad about that. But I did catch Timberlina's What's in Timberlina's Tin the other day, and I won.
Yeah, you did well, because they hide it quite a lot. They hide it quite well in that tin.
They do. Well, it wasn't actually in a tin, which I think gave a bit of the game away. But I think you might be able to catch it again on Timberlina's Instagram page if you want to watch. There was an interesting one beforehand. She was on the line with someone from Finland, and they had a tin of a very unusual meat that we don't normally have in Britain, but they have all the time in Finland. What do you think it was?
Well, you told me what it was, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I did, yeah.
But I actually can't remember.
Well, my first guess...
No, but it was a strange kind of...
Well, it took a long time to guess, and lots of us were on there, thinking of what it might be. But then I suddenly got closer when I was thinking about what do they eat in Finland? What are the animals that are in Finland? So one of them was bear meat, which apparently you can get in a tin in Finland.
Well, we should get that down you.
I think I've got enough bear meat in me. But the actual tin was elk. And I'm wondering what it would taste like. What do you think? Like venison?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really know what an elk is. Is it just a big deer?
Yeah, it's a bit like a moose. And it has like big antlers.
They've got an elk in the Bristol Museum.
Taxidermied.
Just the skeleton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I just always thought it was just a massive deer. Yeah. So I would imagine it tastes like venison. Probably it tastes a bit sort of like rubbery. I don't know. What do you think you're like if someone was to engage in cannibalism, what do you think you'd taste like?
Me personally.
Yeah.
I'm probably marinated in a lot of alcohol. But supposedly humans taste like pork, don't they?
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, we're called the long pig because we taste like pork.
Worth knowing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're ever in a situation where you have to, I mean, it's human egg and chips. Anyway, what else have you been up to this week?
Well, I was just this afternoon on a Zoom call when it was one of those big Zoom calls. I think there was like about 40 artists in the room, and I thought I was on mute. I wasn't. And I'd just eaten a Magnum and I had the wrapper just literally by my computer and I just scrunched it up.
Right.
It stopped the conversation. It distracted. And then I realised. So I had to mute myself. Usually I'm quite good at muting myself. I'm often muted even when I shouldn't be.
Yeah, I know. I've done that several times with you. What do you think it is about your personality that people think they need to mute you?
Well, I want to mute other people, like especially in those larger meetings, but I don't want to just mute them. I kind of want to fast forward through their comment.
So maybe you want to watch the rerun.
Yeah. My mum and dad used to do that with Strictly Come Dancing because they couldn't bear Bruce Forsyth.
Oh, wow.
So they used to watch it on catch up and just fast forward his bits.
Oh, I love a bit of Brucey. My mum used to watch it for Bruce Forsyth.
Yeah.
Bless him.
I'm not lying.
So we've got a guest later, haven't we? We've got Dan Glass coming on.
Yes, we've got Dan Glass is a bit of everything, really. He's a bit of a historian, a bit of an activist, involved in the performance world. I know him through when I was invited to do a queer tour of London on a double-decker bus, which the bus drove through London and went to all the kind of old kind of hotspots of this, probably 70s, 80s, 90s, I would say. And we parked up at each spot, which are places that no longer are LGBT establishments. And there will be a performance or a talk in those spaces. And I made a show about King's Cross in that. So I did a mini performance on the double-decker bus about the Bell pub, which was a pub full of memories for people in the 80s and 90s.
Sure. How was it performing on a bus?
It was very hard work, and I struggled that day. There was lots of different factors going on in that event. I think it was raining. I'd just done lots of touring that week. And also my ex-boyfriend happened to be on the bus as an audience member. And I was like, I didn't really envisage this whole situation.
Right.
But it was a lovely event, I think. But I was quite glad when I got out of that bus. But I was just having a difficult day. But brilliant to do because you forget about these places. And when you see how many places have been closed down, it's very sad.
My God, I'm just thinking about what's going to happen to some of our venues after lockdown, because some of them are struggling so much at the moment. I know we're slightly coming out of it now, but a lot of them haven't been able to survive because of the lockdown, have they? So yes, it's scary.
Yeah. So when we come out, all go to your local bars and support them.
Yeah, as much as you can. Although I think it's going to be restricted to people with gardens, isn't it, to start off with?
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, just because it's outside.
I thought you meant like clients. Have you got a garden?
Well, that too, yeah. I've got a communal garden, so maybe my other, people in the block will have to come with me.
Yeah, you'll have to come with a bubble.
Oh, I'm talking bubble. Have you found a bubble yet?
I don't want to be tied down.
It's a bit like getting married, isn't it? It's like,
I know.
How can you, who am I going to choose for a bubble? Do I choose a friend for a bubble? Or do I choose a lover for a bubble?
The thing is as well, it's like, I feel like I want to be asked. I don't want to ask.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. It's like marriage proposal, isn't it? It's like you want to be asked. But that's the whole thing about it. And it's also monogamous, this whole coming out of lockdown thing. It's like, it's kind of counterintuitive to how a lot of queer people think. It's just like, how are we going to do this? What else have you been up to? Have we got a What That Really Old Queen this week?
Well, we have got What That Really Old Queen because basically since lockdown, I've been developing a new show, kind of writing and reading a lot and watching a lot of clips. So I've been focusing on the friendship of Kenneth Williams and Maggie Smith. some people know about that friendship, but most people don't actually. And they were great friends.
Do you know what? I didn't know about that friendship until you told me.
Yeah, and it's like what's interesting is that they learned from each other, they copied each other. So Kenneth was slightly older and had been sort of a bit more experienced. And when they did a show together, which was it was called Share My Lettuce. It was a kind of review show. Maggie was there, and he kind of took her to one side and say, "Oh, listen, Ducky, you're being absolutely boring. You just wouldn't say those words like that. You need to colour, it's all like that sort of thing." And they just developed this very intimate relationship, and trusted each other, loved each other, copied each other. And so in the performance, I'm trying to embody both characters.
Right.
They're going to be sat at dressing tables in my bedroom. So it's a kind of like my lockdown visitation from these kind of icons and their communication together and to me.
Was that the picture you posted on Instagram? Was that your Maggie look? You posted a picture
No.
when you were in a little like brown bob.
No, yeah, that was just last night, just messing around with wigs. But I need to get a proper Maggie wig.
Although she's got a bit of a bob going on at the moment, hasn't she?
Yeah, she was always that wig is a bit more like plum, and she was much more of a kind of typical Auburn style. Yeah,
bit more copper.
Yeah, and I've been writing a lot to different, because there's been a lot of people that have written about Kenneth Williams, biographers, and there's the brilliant companion to Kenneth Williams. So getting kind of people's first-hand experience of people that knew him. And a lot of people talk about Kenneth as a kind of a bit of a tragic figure, because there's been lots of conversations around whether he took his own life at the end, because he's a meticulous diary keeper.
Yeah.
And so he records a lot of his feelings. And a lot of his feelings are dark and sad. And the last comment that he writes is, "Oh, what's the bloody point?" But I think it's important to remember that he wasn't always like that. He had brilliant, amazing times. Like lots of people remember him for Carry On films, where he was just a brilliant comic figure.
Yes, but reading those diaries, I was kind of so saddened that he didn't really enjoy playing a lot of those roles. He thought that he should have been playing more highbrow kind of acting roles. The writing is a little bit kind of, how should we put it, shallow, but he was so brilliant at it. He was just so good. And I think those films are testament to the actors that are in them, because they're good because of the actors, really. Because it's all a bit of fluff, really, isn't it? But those characters and actors make it funny.
Recently?
Not recently, no. But I grew up on Carry On films. I must have watched them all, at least 10 times each. But yeah, Kenneth Williams is one of my idols, him, and because of those Carry On films and other things as well, Julian and Sandy, and he used to do like an audience with, and was brilliant, and he did all the chat shows, didn't he? When we were growing up, and because he had so many.
That's how kind of I remember him from my youth.
So many anecdotes. He was so good for a show because he would just entertain.
And when he goes on those chat shows, he doesn't give any space. Like the interviewer doesn't even have to ask a question. He just rolls into one anecdote and one anecdote and one anecdote. And it's like the interviewer doesn't even have to be there.
No, exactly. He just steals the show.
Yeah.
Bless him.
A lot of his frustration was, like you say, down to the fact that he wanted different types of theatrical roles, and he did get pigeonholed, really. And then sort of later on, he just existed really on radio appearances, TV appearances. There was not much really diversity. He got very tired of performing in the theatre. He suffered quite a lot with his stomach problems and depression. He developed a bit of a bad reputation within the theatre for not showing up, or like pulling out of runs and those sorts of things, really.
But do you think that was self-doubt? Because he was a gay man, and we all have a bit of self-doubt because of how we're brought up in this straight society that we're meant to fit into as LGBTQ plus people. Do you think that was a product of that?
It's difficult to say, really, because I feel like it's also wrapped up with inherently being a performer. So kind of what you're talking about is like exactly what Maggie Smith has as well.
Right.
It's just this constant gnawing doubt about like it wasn't good enough.
Yep.
And I think if you're a theatre person, you can be like, oh, it'll be better tomorrow. I'll make it better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And it just carries on, really.
But then, but if you're doing recorded media, it's just there, isn't it? You have to put up with whatever that is.
Yeah.
And
well, this podcast is case in point.
It's okay. The 3.5 listeners that we have love us. But yeah, a lot of performers. I think I would say all performers have that, don't they? I mean, I certainly have. I gave up acting because I got stage fright because I was so crushed by self-doubt and that I wasn't good enough to perform, and it took quite a while for me to come back to performing. And I guess it's probably something intrinsic to performers' personalities in the first place, is the need to be loved and the need to have that kind of adulation in a way, because we're kind of insecure in ourselves anyway.
I mean, I've sort of got to a point of show where I've written a script and I'm sending it out to people. And one of my friends, who also was a friend of Kenneth Williams, looked over the script and he was like, well, I understand why I kind of understand why you're fascinated with him, because like there's something about you, he said to me, that is like when you're on stage, you just feel very natural and like you can command the audience and stuff. And when you're just in real life, it feels like you're slightly bored of it. And I hope you didn't take that as an insult.
You're slightly bored of life.
Yeah. Or just like the interactions of it. Yeah. Maybe I have. I don't know.
Well, I guess we can all be a bit like that at times.
I mean, it's not really about me, is it?
But it's a good analogy. Hello, Mr. Dan Glass.
Here's Dan. We can't hear you, Dan.
We can't hear you, Dan. You might have to switch your mic on.
Look at the concentration of his face.
I know. It's... You know what's so interesting about doing this show is that we get to see people's rooms because everyone's on Zoom. I guess it's just the product of the times we live in, but we get to see the kind of backdrop of people's rooms, and it's always very interesting.
What do you think of Dan's room?
I think it's nice.
There's a lot of interest there.
Yeah.
Can't hear you, Dan.
Still can't hear you.
He's going to switch the computer off.
Okay. Switch the computer off, but that's a good technical tip.
Yeah. Always works well, doesn't it? I just ordered a printer and it arrived, and I posted it on Facebook. I've never met a printer that I like, and has anyone got any recommendations? So I got this new printer through, but somehow it was just not connecting to my Wi-Fi.
Oh God!
I was on a support call to this woman in Romania for a couple of hours. And we still hadn't worked it out by the end of the call, but I had worked out how to do it with a cable. But then I took the cable out, and it started working again.
Well, I think I replied to your post and said that all printers are possessed by demons that are just meant to make humans' lives hell on this planet. And I think that's a case in point.
Well, when I looked at the printer, I wanted it to be robust enough so that when I got angry with it and threw it around the room, it would be able to cope.
And is it?
I'm sort of slightly worried about where you pull it out to add the paper, because it feels like it's quite a delicate thing.
Right.
I feel like in a fit of anger, I might smash it up.
Right. Well, I'm sure you'll be fine.
I just have a lot of anger towards objects. I smashed up a watering can earlier on in the week as well.
See, I like this. I think we're all a bit like that, aren't we? It's better that you do it to objects rather than people.
Yes, I never do it to people.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's just so frustrating because I had this beautiful pink watering can. It can't be used. I had to throw it away after that.
Oh, Well, time to buy a new one.
Yeah. At the moment, I'm using a teapot.
Okay. Well, that works as well, doesn't it? Right. Dan Glass has left the building.
I thought that was a really good interview.
I mean, I think we got all our points across. Shall we have a little break? And then hopefully after the break, Dan will be back.
I'm going to put the oven on.
Put the oven on. I'm going to turn the iron off. And we'll have a little break. And we'll be back after this. Right, so we're back.
Yes.
And we have Dan Glass, our fantastic guest this week. Hello.
Hello, Dan.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to see you.
Oh, it's good to see you too. It's been a while.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm at my home in Shadwell, and I know the back of you can see my bedroom, it's just loud and busy. Yeah, I'm in Shadwell. I've just come back from the Black Lives Matter demo, which has been brilliant, actually. It was really good. There was no fascist to be seen in sight after all of Tommy Robinson's chat. Well, you've got to count your lucky stars and not get complacent, but it was really inspiring. And after all of the however many months of lockdown, things are changing, and still we've got a long way to go, but it was really inspiring to be there. So, but now I'm back home in Shadwell.
Back home at safe in Shadwell.
Yeah.
How do you describe what you do? Because you do quite a lot of things.
She gets it. It's about well, because the book's coming out. People have been like, he's an author, and I'm like, oh well, I guess I am now, but I'm still not used to that. Anyway, it might be a total flop, so then we might want to ignore that. But as a community activist, it's a very loaded term, and it's something that I've had to learn to reclaim. But then a lot of different grassroots movements for a range of social justice issues across the world still challenge the term activist because it can be seen as very individualistic. But that's why I term myself as a community activist. And the areas that I'm particularly active on in the community is HIV and healthcare, being part of ACT UP London, where we met originally when we were planning the Bang Bus. ACT UP stands for AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, which has been a incredible movable disobedience movement since 1987 in the fight for healthcare for people living with HIV and for everyone. And at the moment, particularly on a range of LGBT issues, I'm an activist and tour guide with Queer Tours of London. And we first met when it actually turned out to be one of my favourite projects, the Bang Bus, which was a tour of London, but on a bus.
Yeah.
And the particular theme was the loss of queer spaces. So we had 5 bus stops, and we went to five different venues, one per decade since partial decriminalisation in 1967, and recreated what the clubs were like at the time. And so it was really intergenerational. It was really interactive. It was hilarious and just chaotic and fun and queer and rowdy. And we've done a few other queer bus tours of London since then. But yeah, they're the main things that I've been doing.
It's really that activism can be mixed with some kind of performative, engaging, fun mayhem.
Oh yeah, for me that's essential. That's my go-to. There's this book, I've lost it. I don't know. I think I've lent it to someone. It's called Pleasure Activism. It's just come out, and for me that kind of concept says it all. So creativity for me, like art and creativity and music. Cabaret, all formats for expression are really important for me when it comes to activism because dressing up exactly, and being fabulous and learning from our queer ancestors in terms of how they've defied gender binaries, defied narrow-minded heteronormative culture. So being fabulous is one of the many great things about queer culture which we like to relish in.
Totally. So tell us about your book, Dan. United Queerdom? Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Which is coming out when?
It's coming out on Monday. Oh my God. It's coming out on Monday. It's called United Queerdom, From the Legends of the Gay Liberation Front is of Tomorrow. That's the kind of strapline. And it's come so fast. It's been about late 60s because it's the 50th anniversary of the Gay Liberation Front, who started Pride
Right.
So they started in 1970, and the first actual Pride was in 1972. You know, and it's changed so much now. A lot of people probably think that Pride started in Tesco or Barclays, rather than actually, you know, really beautiful, intersectional, powerful roots. You know, and super relevant today because, you know, the Gay Liberation Front was formed out of two activists from the UK who were in America. They went to the Black Panthers Convention, which was called the Philadelphia Convention, a key Black Power movement who were working in line with the women's liberation movement, where Huey Newton, one of the key figures in the Black Panthers, made a like controversial speech at the time saying that we should welcome in the gay liberation movements. And these two activists were inspired because there was a lot of people there from the Stonewall uprisings the year before. And then they came back to London. They were students at LSE, London School of Economics, and started the British Gay Liberation Front, who then 2 years later started Pride. So these legends, some of they're living legends, the ones who are still with us. And we've been meeting the last like 4 or 5 years in what's called GLF Think-ins, which the kind of format is consciousness raising groups, which they had back 50 years ago, whether it was around coming out, how to come out, or dealing with family homophobia, dealing with homophobia in the workplace, dressing up in the way that in the clothes that you want to wear, sex, intimacy. And so we recreated them in the last 5 years to look at what are our issues today, how we can reclaim Pride and pay tribute to its radical roots. God, I've gone on. Essentially, so that's it.
But what I'm interested to know is, like, how does that conversation feed into conversation like that we are having now today? And do you sense there's a sort of a kind of divide between younger queers and the elders, and can they learn from each other?
Well, what a great question. I think, well, there's divisions everywhere. And when, you know, my boyfriend always challenges me on when I say queer community, because just like all demographics of society, there's huge divisions in opinion and ways of making sense of the world. And same in the queer community. In fact, I'm glad. It would be boring if we all thought the same. So just like back then, 50 years ago, what Stuart Feather from the Gay Liberation Front in his amazing book called Blowing the Lid talks about is the straight gaze. The one, there, you got it. Amazing. Yeah, have you read it?
I've read bits of it, yeah. But my favourite memory of him was of it is when he read it out loud.
Yes. Well, on the Bang Bus.
On the Bang Bus, and then he came to Bristol afterwards and read another part of it. Yeah,
beautiful. It's such an amazing book.
Such a different, like when someone reads, like someone that lived that experience reads it, it's just brilliant.
He is such an icon, and he's been through so much, and it's still, you know. Basically, I found that book because I went to Gaze the Word bookshop, and thank fuck that's opening again on July the 1st. I was so happy when they announced that. I went there and I was really hungry for understanding the history of Pride in London, because I was really just disempowered by the corporate takeover of it. And Uli suggested I read Blowing the Lid, and then it changed my whole world. I emailed Stuart relentlessly. I was like, let's be friends. And then we met up, and we've been working on various projects ever since then. One activist meeting in 2018 that we were in together, everyone was doing a name round and saying their pronouns and how they want to be, you know, just a short sentence about themselves. And Stuart was like, Stuart Feather, I'm a radical queen. I'm a Nancy boy. I'm in defiance of society. What else do you want? And I'm like, oh my God, who is this person? They're amazing. So like Stuart talks about, there was divisions back then. You had what he calls the straight gays who wanted to assimilate, and then the radical queens. And you very much have the same now, I think.
Yeah.
You very much have the same now. And I guess intergenerationally, well, of course, there's a lot of ageism. There's a lot of what I've found actually a bit more in ACT UP, in HIV activism than in LGBT specific activism, is there's a lot of, they're not too much, but it's still quite vivid, is unhealthy ways of dealing with trauma amongst the generations. By any accounts, this isn't everyone, but like, of course, in the AIDS epidemic, it was for the people who were in that first major pandemic. I can't even begin to imagine who lost most of their friends and their loved ones. And because of, you know, huge fear and stigma, which still goes on, and still, you know, mass unrecognition of what the community went through. There's still no AIDS memorial, etc. There's still a lot of pent up undealt with trauma. And so sometimes you do get people who are from the older generation who say to the younger generation, what have you got to moan about? You don't know what it was like. And then trauma is valid on whatever account for anyone who's dealing with it. The younger generation of people living with HIV still have massive stigma to deal with. So I think we have to work together as an intergenerational community and look at the bigger goals rather than turning on each other.
But also, don't we share trauma? I recently read Straight Jacket by Matthew Todd, where he is overcoming society's legacy of gay shame, whereas we're all kind of in a bit of trauma because we have to try and fit into straight society. And isn't that something that binds all of us, no matter what generation we are?
I think our community throughout the generations are dealing with such a blizzard of compounded trauma that it's essential that we join the dots about everything from criminalization pre-67, fast forward not so long to the AIDS epidemic, to Section 28. I think, it's essential that we see our collectivized trauma. But one of the kind of philosophies that I'm really inspired by, which I kind of unpack in the book, is Paulo Freire, who wrote Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Is the kind of founding figure of popular education. And one of the kind of phrases that he uses, he looks at how we could humanize each other. And if we're not conscious and look at the wide zoom out and look at the structural reasons for trauma, the oppressed will easily become the oppressor. So that's why Matthew Todd's book is really good, because it looks at the kind of real deep roots, the pillars of collective trauma, so that we don't attack each other.
Brilliant.
So book's out. What's the date of the book coming out?
June the 15th. Oh, and just to say, so it's out on Monday. The kind of pillar of it is interviewing the founders of the Gay Liberation Front, what their experience of it now, and then their aim, which they always pull me up on when I also get it wrong, is absolute freedom for all. A lot of people would think it's queer freedom for all, or freedom for all the queer community, but it's not. But they saw all injustices as connected. It was formed out of Black power, women's liberation, the anti-war movements, student rights. So they always remind it's not just about LGBT rights. It's seeing the systemic issues behind all injustices. So, some of the incredible campaigns that they've led in the last couple of years, which is platformed in the book, is the No Pride in War campaign. When, in 2015 or 16, I should know this, I think it was 15, UKIP, March on Pride, the United Kingdom Independence Party, who were infamous for loads of homophobic, HIV-phobic, racist, xenophobic statements. And then they were allowed to march on Pride. And it was so vastly different from the reasons it originally started. The next year, BAE Systems, an arms company, deal with the illegal weapons trade all over the world, which kill thousands of innocent people, including queer people, were allowed to march on Pride. Not even just the military, but an arms company. So the GLF were really part of a credible movement called No Pride in War. And then, so it looks at some of those case studies so that we can really continue the journey towards absolute freedom for all. And then lastly, it platforms, I think it's 65 other people who were involved in everything from lesbian and gay support the minors, lesbian and gay support the migrants, the African Rainbow Family, trans rights groups, all kinds of groups, intersections of queer freedom and wider areas of justice. And then lastly, I weave in my personal journey into it all.
It sounds amazing. I can't wait to read it. I'm chomping at the bit.
Oh, thank you.
Where can people get it? Can you get it on Amazon, or would you prefer people to go somewhere else?
Zbooks is the best place.
Yeah.
Let me just get their website, zbooks.net. In fact,
I'm presuming that Gays the Word is going to stock it.
I would bloody hope so, because they inspired me on this whole journey. Yeah, they will. They will. In fact, I'll just send you the link to the track.
Send me the link, and I'll put it in the description of the podcast, so our listeners can click on it.
Amazing. Amazing.
Which is
Brilliant.
So
Yeah,
Dan,
amazing.
are you gonna? So at the end of our show, we do a little thing called Queens of Agony, where we answer some quandaries from our listeners. Can you stay on board for that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go into that now. I'm going to do a big gong. And because that's what I like to do before this section, we'll do some Queens of Agony. How old are you, Dan?
36.
36. I don't think you're quite in the old Queen pantheon, but we'll let you in the throne room. It's fine. So anyway,
I think Dan's got a lot of history on his shoulders.
He certainly has. He's an old soul.
He probably can all the queens from the past.
Yeah.
Well,
I am learning from, Queer Tours of London, and the book is all about, like, there's a phrase I like, coming into rather than coming out. Like when we start on the journey of self-acceptance, when we start digging beneath the kind of amnesia, the kind of institutional homophobia, it's such an incredible world that we've been denied. So I really like, what do we come into rather than coming out of? And learning from old queens who've paved the way for us is essential, because otherwise you can either just recreate the wheel, recreate mistakes, and then just like not really cherish the incredible life, like universal journey before us.
Exactly. Well, my lifetime spans the lifetime of your book, so that's my experience. Anyway, so we'd like to get your input on some of these quandaries. So, dear old queens and Dan, do you know why you're single or not really settled? Gay men's platonic relationships can be a great source of support and comfort to each other, even becoming like family when family support is lacking. But when it comes to dating, that's where things often seem to go awry. The vast majority remain single for years or decades, while a significant number who do find someone often compromise, enduring half-hearted relationships where all sorts of small issues are analysed, searching for reasons why things aren't going as well as they should be. Any number of articles written by therapists will torment the single individual to distraction, telling them it's their past, that they're not dealing with things properly, and they're not accepting themselves. I don't know why most aren't finding anyone, and it's not because they don't want to. And most who live with compromise do so as an alternative to living alone. If it were only about our limited numbers, why does the issue persist in cities with relatively large gay populations? If the problem was as shallow as fussiness about looks and status, as therapists also like to tell us, then why do so many good-looking...
It's a dissertation.
No. I know, it sounds like it. Just Anyway, if the problem was as shallow as fussiness about looks and status, as therapists also like to tell us, then why do so many good-looking, successful gay men, thank you very much, remain equally affected? Why do you think the reason is? Wow, that's it's a long letter. It's very in-depth and very analysing why a lot of gay men are single. What do we think?
Oh, great question.
I think there's lots of things to unpack. I think, for one, like maybe they don't want to be in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They want the freedom and stages of their life where you want to be in a relationship and you want to be on your own and free. And maybe those stages can last a decade. Why shouldn't they?
Yeah. I don't know. Is it another thing? Is it like intrinsic? Is it another thing of this? We're all living in a little bit of trauma, living in, we've all got this shame of society because we're gay. Maybe that's affecting our relationships in some way. What do you think, Dan?
I think, I totally agree. I'm always like willing to blame the system rather than my own potentially really shit dating, sex habits. Who knows? But I'll just carry on blaming the system. I'm a Section 28 baby. I started school in 1988, finished college in 2003. The exact dates of the start and finish of Section 28. And I think, the heart of the question, why do some, I totally agree, a lot of people don't want to be in relationships, but why do a lot of people in the queer community find relationships and dating hard? I don't think we can ever underestimate the damage of institutional homophobia and legislation like Section 28 and all the countless other damaging, there's still, I think it's 72 or 73 countries in the world which make it illegal, criminalize being queer. The damage that does in terms of our confidence is like like huge. You can't even like quantify it. It goes.
It's like as well, like if you can't see your own story reflected back, how are you gonna live your life? Yeah, like that's a history thing. But if it's an educational thing, like with schools and stuff, like it's impossible to carve your own pathway.
Exactly. So it's kind of, like Matthew Todd so well talks about in Straight Jacket, is how we can externalize, find an outlet for internalized shame and trauma. And so I think, I'm actually reading this other book by, Brené Brown.
So what's the book?
Brené Brown, she had like one of the top looked at TED Talks called The Power of Vulnerability. And her book's called Daring Greatly, How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent and Lead. Anyway, I'm thinking about the book in relevance to this is because we've had such a tiny space in the public consciousness, in cultural consciousness, in our own space to understand who we are, let alone cherish who we are, that of course we're not going to have a deep toolkit on how to build healthy relationships because we've had a very narrow space in order to inhabit. So that's why Pride, and that's why all forms of like queer reclamation of space, both the mental and physical space, is so important so that we can actually practice more having healthy relationships. So I think for the person who asked that question, if we don't look at the root cause, we'll just look at the symptom of everything rather than the root cause of it all. So I think they're the main reasons why I think
Dan's right, blame the system.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Rather than my shitty dating habits.
But I agree as well. And also, I think if we do look at it objectively like that, we can actually have a little bit more understanding of each other and not be so kind of judgmental about each other, and actually understand why we do the things we do, why we are the way we are. And actually, we can understand that. And then if we have that understanding, maybe better relationships are going to come out of that, whether they're friendships or fuck buddies or romantic relationships.
Yeah. And what we're sold from like mainstream society is so limited and so narrow-minded that we have such false expectations of how to have healthy relationships when it comes to sex, when it comes to intimacy, when it comes to objectifying each other's bodies and thinking everyone should look like they should have a fucking six-pack or whatever. Totally. It's just so unreal. And, I remember as a teenager watching Queer as Folk on telly. And for me, that was just blew my mind. And everyone's had their own version of Queer as Folk. And now there's obviously a lot more. You have no role model in society, then you're just grasping at straws.
Totally. And then you don't really know how to have a relationship with anyone. That's the problem.
I was just going to also say, what is this person's idea of a relationship anyway? Maybe I had fantastic sex all night long last night. Maybe I can say that I'm in a relationship just because I don't take them to the theatre or you see me out having dinner with them, whatever. Aren't those things, we're just putting the way that you present that to other people in an acceptable way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about communicating that there can be different types of relationship. It doesn't have to be heteronormative, monogamous, getting married, having kids. There's lots of different relationships that you can have that can be equally fulfilling, and actually give you a little bit more. I think in life you have to have multiple relationships, whether they're friendships, sex relationships, or romantic relationships. You can't just rely on one person to give you everything.
No.
You know, and that's the problem. Our expectation is because of everything we're fed through the media and because of straight society, we're fed this thing where you have the one person who's going to complete you. And it's it's already starting from a dysfunctional place because only you can complete you and everything else is the cherries on top, right?
Yeah, of course. And I think there's also a lot about, for so long, we internalized the stigma that of all the vile things that have been thrown at the queer community, that it's easy to re-manifest that in a quite like a throwaway culture, which treats people like, objects rather than the like queer gods that we are. And I think it's really what I'm trying to challenge myself on. I'm sure it's like so many people, we've grown up in a kind of hostile and homophobic environment where we literally can't have open relationships. I grew up in a very religious environment, and it's just like throwaway fucks in alleyways with people who you'll never see again, which is great at the time, but you never have deep, meaningful relationships because you can't have public displays of affection. Anyway, the point where I'm to challenge myself on really looking at every relation I have as like the queer gods that we've always been denied, and trying to challenge that kind of throwaway culture that we've had to exist within.
And right now, it's illegal to be in a open relationship, isn't it, really?
With Boris's can't have sex indoors with someone not in your bubble, and you can't have sex outdoors, which is why I think we should start a dogging renaissance. In fact,
well, Neil Bartlett said the same thing last week.
Yes, Neil. Yes, Neil.
He said, "Can I just say, a socially distanced wank in public spaces is the way to go."
Damn right. I've actually found a perfect car park in northeast London where we should we got obviously publicly, but we'll find ways. Well, I'm just doing some fucking radio, aren't I? We'll have a jogging renaissance party. I think, with, oh God, we can't talk too much about Corona because I want to shoot myself in the face. But we've got to look at, I'm really looking at the discrepancies of what this establishment deem as essential and what they deem as non-essential. Of course, the Tory government have always been completely complicit in institutional homophobia, like Section 28 we talked about. Things haven't changed so much. And of course, they're not going to prioritise the queer community's well-being and needs. Already a third of our queer spaces have been shut down in the last 5 years. So many of them might be on the scrap heap because of the impacts of Corona, meaning that there's even less spaces for us to connect and thrive and love each other. So we're going to have to be inventive with how we claim.
Dan, you're sounding a bit like a robot.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
I don't think we should spend too long on these questions. Can we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one's similar.
Amazing.
In a way, it's similar, or it taps into the same issues. Dear old Queens, did any of you come out as gay before accepting it? I mean, in the period between realizing you're gay and until accepting it, self-acceptance. I'm working on my own self-acceptance, and I think that coming out is hard to do if you haven't fully accepted yourself. But on the other hand, coming out could also be an important part of the journey of self-acceptance. What do you guys think? I think you're absolutely right. I think coming out is part of the journey of self-acceptance.
So the question is, did we accept ourselves before coming out, or did it help? Or did coming out help with accelerating self-acceptance?
Yeah, I don't think I was comfortable in my own skin as being gay. I came out when I was 22. I don't think I was comfortable in my own skin about being gay until I was about 30, which is about 8 years later. And then it took another decade for me to actually be completely comfortable with me and myself. I think it is part of the journey. I don't think you need to think you accept yourself beforehand. I think that it's all part of, getting your friends and family to accept you or not. It is part of that journey of your own acceptance. But I don't know, what are your guys' experience?
I feel like for me, my journey of accepting myself has been a bit more nuanced than just that. Like, it's been about embracing something that feels more femme and a bit more not fitting in with something else. I think that when I first came out, in the 90s, I probably thought that I wanted to present myself as something that felt very like, I don't know what we're saying, like a professional, I'm going to say like a professional gay, a kind of like the stylish gay. Do you know what I mean?
I think we were both on that journey, because that was what was peddled to us at the time, wasn't it? That was how gay people were. That was what was attractive.
Yeah. So you look really good and clean and kind of like image, and it was just sort of caught up in a bit in the kind of Thatcher stuff, I guess. Yeah. A hangover of that, or at least
definitely a hangover of that. I mean, I came out in 1990, so yeah, it was all about that. I mean, I was an indie kid, and when I came out, I decided to completely change who I was, because my boyfriend at the time and what I was seeing on the gay scene was very different to the way I presented myself. And I think it took me like 20 years to actually come back to who I was. Back to somebody who I recognize as being me. And it's partly because of the gay scene. It's partly because of society. It's partly because of the journey that you have as a human being, I think, about accepting who and what you are, and getting to know yourself along that journey. I don't know, Dan, what's your experience?
I never had the like coming out moment, because well, I won't say his name, but there was a beautiful punk from Camden who I was going out with when I was a teenager, who I was called sucking off on the sofa at home. And my mum had like plastic sheeting. It was the kind of sofa with plastic sheeting on it. So the punk, my ex.
Your mum, Joan Crawford.
I was just about to say the same thing.
Like a Northeast London Jewish version of Joan Crawford. Well, she might actually like that. And so I never had to do that I'm out, because it was just fucking obvious. But then it was very not accepted. So I just kind of legged it from all the kind of institutions that I grew up with, like home, school, and just pegged it to Soho and do what you do in Soho, really. And God bless that alleyway outside of a ghetto nightclub in Falkenberg Court. I can love it.
But did you find that Soho was somewhere that you felt like because if you go to Soho now, I don't feel
Yeah, I've still got a lot of nostalgia for Soho, for Camden, where I kind of grew up, even though they're parodies of themselves in many ways now. Mm-hmm. I think there's so much, there's so little spaces that we have, that even though so much of Soho pisses me off, I still have like a deep love for the geographical space, for its history, and for the queer community in all its shapes and forms, who present ourselves in many ways, because underneath it all is that collective experience, that collective trauma. So I did find Soho in the 90s a magical place and a lifesaver for me, because I'm from my biological background is quite a religious, fundamental Jewish background, where it's an abomination to be gay. So for me, it was a lifesaver, because I knew only 4 boys by the age of 14 from my synagogue in my Jewish community who'd already killed themselves. So the remainder of our queer Jewish gang called it running from the synagogue to Soho. So it was a huge lifeline. So all the shitty things just kind of faded into the background.
Could be the title of your autobiography.
Running from the synagogue to Soho. A wandering Jew who found himself in a Soho alleyway. Yeah, so I think there's different stages of different coming out. It's not some like accelerator into the sunset. We have to come out in different shapes or form all the time. And sometimes we go back into the closet in some way. But the stage where I'm at in my life now, so this is like 20 odd years later from the plastic sofa covering incident, I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky. So fucking glad that I'm queer. I'm so fucking glad that I'm queer. I still have, lots of straight mates, but I just feel so lucky because we're part of such an incredible community who still has so much collective purpose.
Totally.
And we are forced to be critical. We're forced to challenge ourselves. Even though there's times of like suicidal pain, like if you can get through to the other end, it can be, when it's the extremities, like when you've been through so much shit, you go through the other end where you really appreciate the ultimate joy as well. So I think, at the moment, I'm just like having a blissful relationship with it all. But I'm sure there'll be tough times again.
Well, but we're all here for each other. There's a lot of us now. We're not hiding anymore. So most of us
just
are.
You meant on the Zoom call.
So what did you say, Tommy? You cut out then.
I said I thought you just meant on this Zoom call. We're here for each other.
We're not hiding at all. Anyway, I've got two more questions. These are on less kind of political notes, I think. So, dear old Queens, who's the daddy? Okay. Ooh. So I was in bed with a man who's probably 5 years...
I mean, I think this sounds political already.
Well, it depends what kind of politics you're after. So, okay, so I was in bed with a man who's probably 5 years younger than I am, but he's a total masculine top, and I'm a bottom, who isn't very masculine at all. Well, I was just playfully calling him a daddy, and he asked me how he could be the daddy if he was younger than I am. I told him that being a daddy is not about age, it's about attitude, and I told him, therefore, he is the daddy, and to put it back in me, LOL. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, what are our thoughts on him putting it back in you or being the daddy?
Yeah, wow, where do we start?
I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, as I'm a daddy in residence.
Wait, can you say that bit again in terms of can you repeat the whole question? There's just so much brilliance in there. Can you repeat the whole thing?
So I'll explain it to you. So this guy is in bed with someone who's 5 years younger than him, but the guy who's younger is the masculine top, and the older guy called him the daddy, but the younger guy was like, how can I be the daddy when I'm younger than you? And the older one was like, because it's more about an attitude and therefore get your cock back in me.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, who wants to respond?
I don't feel like it's a question. I just feel like, get on with it.
I guess the question is, can an older person call a younger person a daddy? But is it more about being a top or a bottom, or is it more about age, or is it about attitude?
It's fucking role play, isn't it? It's just role play. You're just playing out a role. So, like, why couldn't you be a daddy, a mummy, a brother, whatever floats your boat? Like,
yeah. I totally agree. Like, you get some really like wise young people and like naive older people. So it's just role play, and I think you can just have as much fun as you want with that. It's totally alien to me. I'm the self-titled CEO of the Vanilla Club, because I'm like an old romantic, and just like what I get off on. I've had quite a few lovers who are into the whole role play thing. It's just not my thing. It's so alien to me. I just get off on it. We've actually set up these hilarious like vanilla parties where we're naked and give each other massages and eat vanilla ice cream, listening to like Billie Holiday and asking each other about what our nan was doing in the war. Because that's what I get off on arguing. What's your soul saying? That's what I get off on. So I don't, the whole like daddy thing. Well, see, they can fucking train me. Maybe after lockdown, then I'll be up for it. So I'd be up for knowing if I'm a daddy or not. Who knows?
I think the daddy thing has been a bit of a catch-all thing for kind of older masculine men. And it can be a role play thing. I mean, I think when I first started being called a daddy, I was quite affronted by it because I was like, hang on a minute, what are you talking about? But I've kind of accepted it now, and I've accepted that role. I guess it can be a bit about role play. It can be a bit about someone who's a little bit older, a bit more masculine. But I think daddies can be tops or bottoms. I think they can be dominant.
Control as well.
Sorry?
They can control.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's the whole spectrum of daddies there. If you want to call people daddies, I don't think you can just define something as being older or younger or top or bottom or whatever.
Yeah.
I think there maybe is a certain look for a daddy. And then just, maybe take it from there.
Well, we've often said that I'm more of a mummy.
We have often said that. Okay. I think have we sorted that? Have we sorted the daddy issue out? I don't think it'll ever be sorted, but
like ongoing journey, which I'm sure there'll be like daddy issues galore after we get out of lockdown. I'm sure there's loads of underground daddy issues going on at the moment.
Well, I think one of the good things about the whole daddy thing is that it started to be like the gay scene started to be more accepting of older gay men. And whereas when Tommy and I came out, if you were past 30, you were dead in gay years. That was it. Yeah. Whereas, and I think because of the AIDS thing as well, where we had a pretty much lost generation because of that, the fact that, younger gays are appreciating older gays and seeing their worth and wisdom and sexiness is a good thing. So that's why I've embraced the whole daddy thing.
Yeah, good. I'm glad, hot daddy. It frustrates me all the like ages thing so much because it's just so boring. It's just so boring.
Yeah.
It's like, why would we want to just, it's narcissistic. Yeah. I've got no time for it. Like, why would we want to just fancy ourselves? What? Boring.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Paddy, what's the next question?
Next question. Dear old queens and the lovely Dan Glass.
I want to be an old queen.
Okay. You're in the pantheon. You're in the throne room.
Yeah.
Dear old queens. Are glory holes the safest way to have sex now? I asked this somewhat humorously. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about how I'm going to resume sexual activities now that places are starting to reopen. And to those of you who are all ready to pounce on me about how selfish I'm being and I need to calm down my horny ass, etc., you might as well save your energy because you'll be preaching to the choir. Staying home and jacking off can only do so much for me. I need to touch, feel, see a human body. So if anyone can think of a creative and safe way to have sex, oral and or anal, in the age of coronavirus, I'm all ears. P.S. I've never really been into glory hole stuff because I like to see, touch, feel a person. I'm playing with the idea, but if I run out of options, it may come to that. Okay, so what do we think? Glory holes?
Great question. Just to clarify, is glory hole seen as the safest way because you can't transmit sweat and everything through the wood?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can transmit through semen, but maybe if they're wearing a condom in the glory hole, that's fine.
Yeah.
But what do we reckon? Are glory holes a safe way to beat the coronavirus? Is it another way other than socially distanced wanking?
Well, everyone keeps saying, and I'm going to say it now, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
But I do feel like instinctively, like probably the most infectious thing would be kissing. Would it be not?
Probably, because I think the coronavirus kind of lives in the throat before it goes anywhere else.
Yeah, I don't know really, to be honest, but there could be something in it. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think, I think in terms of the specific example of glory holes and our lovely specific question, if the need is to see the person, then maybe we could create a giant see-through perspex glory hole wall so that we can see our partners. We've got to be inventive. There's many ways to skin a cat, and I think it's obviously completely unrealistic that people aren't going to kiss and fuck, and we need to marry that up with how we can reduce wider transmission and protect those most vulnerable. But it's completely unrealistic to think that people won't. So we've just got to find inventive ways to have joyful sex in the way that we need, which is more protective. So in this, whether it's the masks, obviously condoms, but in this particular way, I think having Perspex is the see-through glass, right? I haven't said the right word.
Yeah, you have.
See-through. Yeah. Just make a giant see-through Perspex glory hole wall.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, sex suits.
Sex suits, yeah.
Let's have a sex suit. I want a clubbing suit which also doubles as a sex suit.
Damn right. Like cruising will go through the roof, dogging will go through the roof. You know, in many ways, you know, we're the queer community are like incredible ability to adapt and like see through the cracks in many ways. So I think
I like that, see through the cracks.
It brings a whole new meaning to what's the crack.
Exactly. I'm up for a Perspex glory hole wall in Trafalgar Square, and I'll help make it if that caller likes the idea.
Funded by the government, obviously.
Funded by the Tories.
Funded by the Tories. Well, let's face it, they're probably more into glory holes than we are.
Exactly.
They know how that works.
They do. Right. On that note, I think it's a good point to end the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. You've cheered me up so much.
Thank you, Dan, for being a fantastic guest. I can't wait to read your book.
Yeah, you were brilliant, Dan.
Oh, thank you so much. So good to chat. And then, like, so you've got the podcast coming. What's your other plans in the next little while?
Well, just the podcast.
Right. Well, we'll see each other in a big. In fact, a little birdie said that at some point in the near future, when it's a socially acceptable time to have the George Michael party that we do in Hampstead Heath, that a little birdie told me that might happen again.
Oh yeah, I'm well up for a George Michael party.
I really want to go to that.
Yeah,
it's been so fun. This will be the 4th year. And it's the 30th anniversary of Freedom, George Michael's song Freedom. So obviously more poignant than ever. So we're going to create a catwalk in the woods and recreate the Freedom song and the burning jacket and the bed sheets. And just have loads of fun because we fucking deserve it after all of this.
We'll do the podcast live from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly.
I wonder how George Michael will be remembered apart from his music in terms of like being a sexual liberator.
Oh, big time. Yeah, total pioneer in, you know, his statement, "Fuck off, this is my culture," is what we have on a banner in the woods when we had the parties, because he was defiant and knew that life was short and wasn't going to take for any of the harassment. So yeah, definitely in terms of like a cultural icon for sexual freedom.
And if "Let's Go Outside" isn't an anthem for coming out of lockdown, I don't know what is.
So fucking right. Because, okay, great. I'll let you know as soon as we know. It's going to be the next soon. I'll ask the gang, but I think we should do it as soon as possible because things, you know, I've just come back from the Black Lives Matter protest and we have to, things that we are obviously getting out, shops are reopening on Monday, but we have to obviously be conscious of how we do things. But I think do you think it's valid to do it in the next couple of weeks?
I think it's you could do that socially distantly, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Anyway, thank you, Dan. Please say goodbye to our lovely listeners.
Oh, bye. Thank you so much for having me. Keep strong out there and see you back outside soon.
Yeah.
Or back outside in the woods.
Yes. Back outside in the dogging areas, at the glory holes, wherever. Tommy, say goodbye.
Love you daddies out there. Teach me how to be a daddy one day.
Well, coming to Udemy soon is Bernie's daddy class 1-on-1. So there you go. Wow. No, it isn't. Well, but maybe it is.
Yeah,
maybe I should do that. Anyway, Tommy, say goodbye.
Loads of love.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, and we will see you next time on What That Old Queen.
Yeah.
You have been listening to What? That Old Queen? Written and presented by Tom Marshman and Bernie Hodges. The show was produced by Bernie Hodges in lockdown 2020 for Hodge Podcasting. If you'd like to sponsor a show, or you'd just like to be a guest, or you have a question for the Old Queens, You can email on hello@thatoldqueen.com or find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter.